In the fall of 1982, an invisible threat struck the city of Chicago. Families who had reached for a common household medicine, extra-strength Tylenol, expected relief from pain, fever, or discomfort. Instead, they found themselves at the center of one of the most terrifying and unpredictable murder cases in American history. Within a single day, seemingly healthy people collapsed and died without warning. Hospitals were baffled. Emergency responders were overwhelmed. And authorities quickly realized they weren't witnessing a natural outbreak, but a series of deliberate, cold-blooded poisonings. The victims had nothing in common. Different ages, different neighborhoods, different lifestyles. But they had all taken the same thing, a simple Tylenol capsule. What followed was a nationwide panic unlike anything the country had ever experienced. A massive, multi-agency investigation. A complete recall of one of the most trusted medicines in America. And a desperate race against time to stop a killer who left no fingerprints, no DNA, and no witnesses. This case remains technically unsolved to this day, an open wound in true crime history, and a haunting reminder of how fragile public safety can be. Tonight, in this case file, we revisit the terror, the investigation, and the chilling mind of whoever was behind the Chicago Tylenol murders.
The morning of September 29, 1982, began like any other in the Chicago metropolitan area. Commuters rushed through their routines, parents prepared for work, and children headed off to school. Nothing seemed unusual until a series of sudden and unexplained medical emergencies shattered the calm. The first to fall ill was 12-year-old Mary Kellerman of Elk Grove Village. She woke up feeling unwell, complaining of a sore throat and congestion. Her parents, believing it was nothing more than a mild cold, gave her a single extra-strength Tylenol capsule, America's most trusted over-the-counter pain medication at the time. Within minutes, Mary collapsed on the bathroom floor. By the time paramedics arrived, she was unresponsive. Doctors were unable to revive her. Her death was tragic, but at first, it seemed isolated. Just hours later, in nearby Arlington Heights, 27-year-old Adam Janis was at home after work when he suddenly experienced severe chest pain and collapsed. Like Mary, he too had taken Tylenol earlier that day. The medical team attempted aggressive resuscitation, but Adam was pronounced dead shortly after arrival at the hospital. His cause of death? Unknown and shockingly sudden. What makes the next event especially heartbreaking is that tragedy struck the Janis family twice more, within the span of a single afternoon. After Adam's unexpected death, his family gathered at his home to comfort each other. His younger brother, Stanley, overwhelmed with grief, entered Adam's kitchen and took 2 Tylenol capsules from the same household bottle. Moments later, he collapsed to the floor. In the chaos, his wife Teresa, panicked and exhausted, also took Tylenol from the same bottle to calm her nerves. Within minutes, she too fell unconscious. By nightfall, 2 more members of the same family were dead. 3 sudden deaths in one family raised immediate alarms, yet no one suspected poisoning. Not yet. Doctors considered cardiac events, genetic issues, even viral outbreaks. But none of these made sense. Then the pattern widened. Across the suburbs of Chicago, more emergency calls began pouring in. In Winfield, 31-year-old Mary McFarland, a manager at a local telephone company, collapsed at work after taking Tylenol during her break. In Lombard, 35-year-old flight attendant Paula Prince, returning home from a trip, was captured on security cameras purchasing Tylenol at a Walgreens before heading to her apartment. She was found dead the next evening. And in another suburb, 19-year-old Mary Reiner, who had recently given birth, was also killed after using Tylenol for postpartum pain. 7 victims. Different towns, different backgrounds, different daily routines. But one connection. Every single one had consumed extra-strength Tylenol capsules shortly before collapsing. At first, no one, neither doctors nor paramedics, connected the dots. These emergencies occurred in different hospitals, different neighborhoods, at different times of day. But as the death toll climbed, a handful of medical professionals began noticing a disturbing similarity. All the victims were young or relatively healthy, and all had died within minutes of taking a common, everyday medication. The breakthrough finally came when a nurse at Northwest Community Hospital looked through the belongings of one of the victims, Mary Kellerman. She noticed a bottle of extra-strength Tylenol with several capsules missing. Something about it seemed off. After another victim arrived in similar circumstances, a doctor raised the possibility no one wanted to imagine. What if the Tylenol is poisoned? Immediately, investigators opened the remaining capsules from the victim's bottles. Inside the gelatin shells, instead of compressed white medication, they found a crystalline blue-white powder, the unmistakable scent of bitter almonds filling the air. It was potassium cyanide, one of the fastest-acting and deadliest poisons in existence. The realization spread through hospital corridors like wildfire. The deaths were not natural, not accidental, not random. They were murder. Worse yet, these murders were not personal. They were indiscriminate, unpredictable, and terrifyingly easy to execute. Before police or federal authorities could even react, the public was already at risk. Anyone in Chicago who had purchased Tylenol within the last few days might unknowingly be holding a ticking time bomb inside their medicine cabinet. The discovery marked the beginning of one of the most urgent and chaotic public health hunts in American history. But in these first critical hours, one fact became chillingly clear. Someone had turned a trusted household medicine into a silent weapon, and they had done it without leaving a trace. The Chicago Tylenol murders triggered one of the largest and most urgent criminal investigations in American history. What began as a cluster of mysterious deaths rapidly escalated into a nationwide panic, forcing authorities to confront an unprecedented form of tampering, one that struck at the heart of public trust. Shortly after the first victims were identified, law enforcement realized they were dealing with something far more dangerous than isolated tragedies. Police, forensic experts, medical examiners, FBI agents, and federal health officials were pulled together into an emergency task force. The priority was clear: identify how Tylenol, one of the most widely used over-the-counter medications in the United States, had become a silent delivery system for cyanide. The first major breakthrough came when investigators confirmed that every victim had ingested extra-strength Tylenol capsules purchased from different stores across the Chicago metropolitan area. This immediately ruled out accidental contamination during manufacturing. Instead, it suggested a chilling alternative. Someone had taken bottles off store shelves, opened them, inserted poison, then quietly returned the products to be purchased by unsuspecting customers. This method introduced a terrifying reality. Anyone, at any time, could have been exposed. Anyone could have picked up a bottle. Anyone could have died. To determine the scope of the threat, investigators visited more than 1,200 stores, pulling Tylenol bottles from shelves, collecting samples, and checking for abnormal odors, tampered seals, or capsule irregularities. More than 31 million Tylenol bottles were recalled nationwide in what became one of the largest consumer product recalls to ever occur. Despite the urgency, early forensic analysis revealed almost no direct evidence of the tampering. Capsules left behind no fingerprints. Bottles showed no clear signs of forced entry. And security cameras, rare in retail stores during the early 1980s, provided little help. Investigators had to reconstruct the killer's methods from fragments and timing. One theory pointed to a single individual who moved through the Chicago area, purchasing bottles, taking them home to fill capsules with potassium cyanide, and then returning the altered products to store shelves. This alone would require precision, planning, and a chilling calmness. Another possibility emerged. The killer might have chosen stores at random, with no prior knowledge of victims. If that was true, the act was not just murder, it was terrorism on a civilian population. As investigators dug deeper, they began to suspect that the tampering occurred post-manufacturing but pre-purchase. The contamination pattern, spread across multiple suburbs, supported that theory. But even with this major insight, identifying a suspect proved nearly impossible. The killer had taken advantage of a system with almost no security safeguards. Then a letter arrived. A handwritten extortion letter demanded $1 million to stop the killing. The author claimed responsibility for the poisonings and threatened additional deaths unless Johnson & Johnson paid. Investigators quickly traced the letter to a man named James William Lewis, who lived in New York. Lewis had a criminal background and was highly intelligent, with skills in accounting and forgery. However, and this became one of the most controversial parts of the case, Lewis had a strong alibi. He was living in New York during the time of the Chicago poisonings. While he was arrested and convicted for extortion, authorities could not prove he had anything to do with the murders themselves. Yet even today, some investigators believe he may have played a role or at least understood the crime in ways he shouldn't have. Meanwhile, police continued interviewing store employees, pharmacists, truck drivers, warehouse staff, anyone with access to Tylenol shipments. The FBI analyzed sales logs, distribution routes, and even the geographical pattern of the deaths. Psychological profilers were brought in to construct a behavioral portrait of the killer. They described the culprit as methodical, patient, and likely motivated by control or revenge. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the investigation hit repeated dead ends. The sheer randomness of the act made it almost impossible to narrow down suspects. Without fingerprints, eyewitnesses, or confessions, law enforcement had little left to pursue. What emerged instead was a new reality. The Tylenol killer had exploited a weakness in American consumer safety and walked away undetected. The investigation spanned years. Dozens of suspects were questioned, hundreds of leads explored, and countless theories debated. The crimes forced sweeping changes in packaging laws across the United States, but the identity of the killer remained as invisible as ever. In the end, the investigation into the Chicago Tylenol murders became a defining moment in forensic history, a case where science, law, and public safety converged against an unseen enemy. Yet, despite the massive mobilization of resources, the killer was never caught. A faceless figure who, with 6 capsules of poison, changed a nation forever. As the Tylenol murders captured national attention, the media became an unstoppable force in shaping public fear, public behavior, and even the government's response. What began as a local tragedy in Chicago quickly grew into a nationwide panic as headlines warned Americans that something as simple and trusted as an over-the-counter painkiller could kill without warning. From the earliest moments of the case, reporters swarmed Chicago hospitals, pharmacies, and police briefings, attempting to uncover new angles on a story that felt almost unreal. Tylenol had been a household name, a product known for safety and reliability. Suddenly, it was portrayed as a silent threat hiding in medicine cabinets across the country. News stations repeated the same terrifying warning every hour. Do not consume any Tylenol. Dispose of all bottles immediately. This level of urgency had rarely been seen in consumer product history. For the first time, the public was urged to stop using an item so common that nearly every American home contained it. Newspapers printed bold headlines about the mysterious Tylenol killer, fueling speculation and fear. Grocery stores and pharmacies pulled bottles from the shelves in massive recalls, leaving empty spaces where Tylenol once stood. Parents, especially, became hyper-aware. They checked their medicine bottles repeatedly, teaching their children never to take anything unless it came from a brand-new, sealed container. In some communities, neighbors stopped accepting baked goods or homemade food out of fear that tampering could happen anywhere. This shift in behavior, subtle yet widespread, marked one of the most significant consumer safety reactions in modern history. The media attention also placed immense pressure on Johnson & Johnson, the manufacturer of Tylenol. The company's response became a major focal point for news outlets. Reporters scrutinized every statement, every press release, every corporate decision. In the days that followed, Johnson & Johnson made what many analysts still consider one of the most effective crisis responses in American business. They ordered a nationwide recall of more than 31 million bottles, the largest and most expensive product recall at that time. This decision cost the company more than $100 million, yet it also reshaped public trust. The recall demonstrated a willingness to prioritize safety over profit, and the media praised the company for acting boldly in a moment of uncertainty. But the media's influence didn't end there. The intense coverage forced the U.S. government to take action. Public pressure skyrocketed. Viewers demanded stronger safety protocols, and lawmakers knew they could not ignore the story dominating headlines. As a result, the Tylenol murders directly led to the development of federal tamper-evident packaging standards, including the sealed foil tops, plastic bands, and multiple safety layers we see on medications today. True crime researchers often point to this event as one of the few mysteries where the impact of the crime extended far beyond the victims and their families. It changed how consumers thought about safety, how companies handled crisis, and how media reporting could shape nationwide behavior. Even after the panic subsided, the Tylenol murders remained a reference point. For decades, documentaries, news specials, podcasts, and crime analysts have returned to the case, exploring how a single, faceless killer temporarily brought an entire nation to a standstill. The killer was never caught, but their influence echoed through every household, every medicine package, and every safety regulation that followed. As the investigation into the Chicago Tylenol murders continued to unfold, one unsettling truth remained. A simple, ordinary household product had become a weapon of mass fear. Even today, more than 4 decades later, the case stands as one of the most haunting reminders of how fragile public trust can be, and how a single act of cruelty can alter society forever. The victims, whose lives were abruptly stolen, left behind grieving families and communities that still carry the scars of that week in 1982. Their stories remind us that behind every headline and every case file, there are real people, individuals whose futures were violently taken away without warning. Despite one of the largest criminal investigations in American history, no one was ever convicted for the murders themselves. Countless leads were followed, suspects interrogated, and theories explored, yet the heart of the mystery remains untouched. Who tampered with the capsules? And why? The tragedy led to sweeping changes in packaging laws and consumer safety, shaping the modern world in ways most people never notice. Each sealed bottle, each safety label, and each tamper-evident design exists because of this case, a lasting legacy forged from unimaginable loss. As we close case file number 03, the Chicago Tylenol murders remain a chilling reminder of the unknown. A crime without a face, a motive without clarity, a mystery frozen in time. And just like the other unsolved cases we explore, some answers stay buried forever. Thank you for joining us on this investigation. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and remember, every mystery hides a truth waiting to be uncovered. This is Hidden Truth Casebook, signing off.